Let's explore discourse analysis, a field of qualitative research that studies how language shapes our behavior, beliefs, and social interactions. The central premise of discourse analysis is that language is always used within a specific context and from a certain perspective. This is why discourse analysis is often referred to as the study of language in context. After all, we adapt our language in different contexts. Consider how we talk with a teacher and how that might be different from how we talk with a close friend, or how politicians use misleading doublespeak to mask inconsistencies between what they say and what they do. And when meeting with new people, think about how we use language to build our identity from scratch. Discourse analysis examines how language functions in real-world situations. It looks at the words we choose, our body language, and how that language influences multiple things: our thoughts, actions, and relationships, how we identify ourselves, our understanding of the world, and the power dynamics that shape us. But what is discourse analysis exactly? Discourse analysis is a language tailored to social contexts and different situations. Our words and body language combined are what enable us to share our thoughts and ideas, build relationships, influence others, and make sense of the world. Let's look at some questions you might ask in discourse analysis. One question could be, how does language construct identity in different contexts? You could also ask, how does language negotiate or influence power? How does language create and maintain reality? How do frames of reference influence language interpretation? Or how can language promote social change? Asking these questions can help show how our relationships can shape our language and vice versa, and how language presents different perspectives and worldviews that influence social reality, power relations, and identity. Let's move on to some different types of discourse analysis. Discourse analysis is a broad term that covers a large group of methodological approaches, including narrative analysis, conversational analysis, critical discourse analysis, and rhetorical analysis, amongst others. Let's look at how discourse analysis operates in these different approaches. First, narrative analysis delves into how stories, their structure, and their content shapes our worldview. For example, you might study how the story of Christopher Columbus is told in different cultures. Moving on to conversational analysis, this approach explores daily conversations, focusing on details like turn-taking, gaze, and body language. Conversation analysis examines how these elements contribute to social goals, like relationship building or conflict management. For instance, your study might analyze the delivery and timing of spoken words in a job interview. Nonverbal cues like body language, gaze, and turn-taking can help you figure out how social status influences negotiation. Next is critical discourse analysis, which is interested in how language is used to construct and maintain social inequalities. It also considers how language can be used to challenge and resist social oppression. Here, you might study how politicians use divisive language in a campaign speech. Think us versus them, or haves versus have-nots. Finally, rhetorical analysis dissects how language persuades, informs, and entertains, delving into the speaker's intent, audience, and strategies. This includes examining rhetorical devices, like metaphors and rhetorical questions. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous "I Have a Dream" speech, the metaphor of a promissory note is used to expose government hypocrisy, showcasing how such rhetorical tools evoke emotional responses from the audience. These approaches do occasionally cross paths. For example, narrative analysis and critical discourse analysis can both be used to look at how language is used to construct identity. Or conversation analysis and rhetorical analysis can be used in tandem to examine how language is used to negotiate power relations in social interactions. So you aren't restricted to a single approach if using two will lead to better insights. But keep in mind that using two or more will require a larger time investment. While these approaches can be used together and overlap in what they're looking for, each maintains a unique focus and a priority that offers a different way to frame the process. Now let's look at two different categories of discourse analysis. All of the sub-approaches we've covered fall into two larger buckets: language and use approaches, which focus on linguistic aspects of what we say, and socio-political approaches, which explore how we use language to help us get around in the world. Language and use approaches focus on the linguistics of language use, such as grammar, syntax, phonology, and structure. The aim is to dig into the nitty-gritty of language, how it's used, spread, and even manipulated in different social situations. For instance, in a 2013 conversation analysis, Lee and Bouillon used conversational markers by coding conversation transcripts. They coded these conversational markers according to their function, such as turn-taking, overlap, exhalation, and disagreement. They analyzed how this language is used to negotiate meaning and construct knowledge. Socio-political approaches take a more philosophical stance. They are more concerned with how language constructs and sustains societal power dynamics. And don't let the name fool you. Socio-political methods are not restricted to political issues. There are many other applications too. As a non-political example of socio-political approaches, this 2021 paper examined 180 ExxonMobil climate change communications. These communications showed how the corporation relies on climate risk rhetoric and consumer demand to downplay climate change, normalize fossil fuel consumption, and shift responsibility back onto individuals. Before we segue into the steps of discourse analysis, let's look at a simple mental model to frame how it works. There are 3 main steps to discourse analysis. First, you contextualize your data. Then you look at the structure of it. After that, you pull out and dissect smaller pieces of data called discursive statements. On the outside layer lies the context. Every interview, document, or text is situated within some context, whether it's cultural or otherwise. For example, in Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, the context is the civil rights movement in the United States in 1963. Moving in one more layer, we encounter the structure of the text. While the structure consists of discursive statements, these statements are part of a larger rhetorical structure. In our example, the larger rhetorical structure could be the full transcript of the speech. At the center of the model are the statements themselves. In this example, the statement could be the actual segment from the speech. Now that we've covered context, structures, and discursive statements, we'll dive into how you actually analyze discursive statements, which are the building blocks of discourse. James Gee, a pioneer of discourse analysis, gave us 28 lenses in total. We won't cover them all in this video, but we'll go over 3 to give you a basic understanding of what these lenses look like. The 3 that we'll cover are the subject lens, the intonation lens, and the doing, not saying lens. The subject lens explores why speakers choose specific subjects or topics and how they convey their message about them. Consider whether alternative subjects could have been chosen and why they weren't. Intonation lens investigates how a speaker's intonation, the rising and falling of pitch patterns, influences the meaning of what they're saying. And lastly, the doing and not saying lens considers how discursive sentences are used to persuade, inform, or entertain. To learn about the other lenses and a deeper dive into discourse analysis, check out our blog post on the topic. When you're ready to do your discourse analysis, a qualitative tool like Delve can help you break down and analyze those discursive statements. You can start a free trial of Delve at www.delvetool.com/getstarted.